We're continuing the Sikha regarding Eliyahu Navi. We continue here in Sivches. So before we continue the Sikha inside, just to give you a summary of what the Rebbe said till here. There's two opinions regarding the coming of Eliyahu, whether he comes right before Mashiach comes to let us know the good news that Mashiach is coming. Another opinion is that Eliyahu Navi comes before, or he comes before the war of Gog and Magog, right? Let me just make sure I'm not misquoting this. The first opinion in the Rambam, Yirem b'pshutam shel divrei neviim. Yeah, that before Milchemes Gog and Magog, the Eibusher sends us Eliyahu Navi to make sure that we don't lose our emunah and our hearts remains connected, our hope. Very good. Those are the two opinions. Rambam saying these two opinions, it seems to be an argument regarding a fact. I've explained it's not an argument regarding a fact. Everybody agrees Eliyahu Navi is going to come before Milchemes Gog and Magog. The only question is, Eliyahu Navi has many different activities that he does throughout history, including when Mashiach comes. Not necessarily is it related to the coming of Mashiach. Not necessarily is it that special shlichus of Eliyahu Navi to usher in redemption. The machlokes in the Rambam is what coming of Eliyahu is related to Geula and what is not. First opinion is that his coming before Milchemes Gog and Magog is part of ushering in the redemption. But then the Rambam says, Yesh min hachachamim, there's another opinion that says that has nothing to do with Geula. That's just there to be mechazik the Yidden in a difficult time period. Mashiach is coming, and then Eliyahu Navi is going to let us know that Mashiach is here, or is about to come. That's the special shlichus of Eliyahu Navi in connection to Geula. The Rebbe also said regarding what Eliyahu Navi is going to do. There's four opinions what Eliyahu Navi is going to do when Mashiach comes. In fact, going into the whole arichis, the point that Rebbe said was everybody agrees regarding the facts what Eliyahu Navi is going to do. The only question is which aspects of what he's going to do is related to Geula and which aspects are not. That's the Nekudah of the Sikha. So in Sivches, the Rebbe will explain, at least in general terms, how could there be a machlokes about this? What is the underlying point of this machlokes? Whether it is related to Geula or not related to Geula. So as we'll see here, the Rebbe will explain that the point is, how do we define Geula? If we have the right description of what Geula is, then we could know which part of what Eliyahu Navi does belongs in Geula and which part is not. Okay, let's see it inside the Sikh here. To add explanation, the Hezbe v'tam pluktasam, in explaining the machlokes regarding the coming of Eliyahu Navi. Begeula, when you speak about redemption, yitzia mimatzav shel galus, leaving a condition of galus. Kama oifanim v'chilukim chulu. There's many ways. There are many levels to this. Biyachas lamatzav shebay nimtzam lefnei zeh. The main point where the distinction of what level of geula we're speaking about, you have to know what kind of a exile are you in, what kind of imprisonment or exile are you in. Depending on the level of galus, will be also what the geula consists of. Uladogme. The Eisitzias Mitzrayim, when Yidden come out of Mitzrayim, befrat based matan Torah, especially when the Eibusher gives us the Torah, Batla hametzias va'efsharos the avdus b'negel b'nei Yisrael v'nasa b'nei Chayrin. What really happened when Yidden left Mitzrayim wasn't only the freedom for that time, but that was the time when the Eibusher changed the entire nature of Klal Yisrael, that they became a free people, meaning that it's impossible for Yidden to ever become avodim in the true sense of the word. A Yid will never truly be an Eved. The very essence and identity of a Yid is a Ben Chayrin, a free person. You could have external circumstances that may be limiting a Yid in things that he does, but you could never again in the future define a Yid as an Eved. In Mitzrayim, Yidden were in a base avodim. There the Yidden were avodim, not after they came out of Mitzrayim. And this is a halacha that's based on the pasuk Meshikasa. The pasuk says, "Kili b'nei Yisrael avodim v'loy avodim la'avodim." Every yid is an eved of Hashem and not an eved for an eved. And this is the reason why a person is not supposed to sell himself as an eved ivri. This is a point that the Maral Meprag speaks about in the Sefer Gvuras Hashem, and the lashon that he uses there is that Yidden became b'nei chayrin be'etzem. The Ben Chayrin, he says, is not a dova mikre. It's not a condition that Yidden are found in, but it's a description of who the Yidden are. The very mitzias of a Yid is a free man. Why? Because there's nothing inhibiting a Yid. Not his guf, not his nefesh bahamis, not a goy, not golus, nothing. A Yid is connected to the Eibusha. That's the very mitzias of a Yid. If there is a matzav of golus, it's external. It's not who the Yid is. That's what the Maral says. What this means is, Shagam b'yoysam b'golus Bavel. Even when Yidden then, after the first Beis Hamikdash, were exiled into Bavel. And the same with other golus. The true identity of Yid, though, remains free people. So this is Gula on one level. The Gula of Mitzrayim is something very deep and very internal, the very identity of a Yid. But together with this fact, Muva Megam Pashat, it's self-understood, She'ef Shel HaHashves es Matzavam Shel Yisrael B'zman HaGalos Legabe Matzavam B'zman Kiyuma Shel Malchus Beis David B'Eretz Yisrael B'Chayetze B'zeh. Obviously, you can't compare the condition Yidden are in when they're in Eretz Yisrael with a king, with a Beis Hamikdash, to their condition in Galus, exiled with Nebuchadnezzar, away from Eretz Yisrael without a Beis Hamikdash. The external circumstance can't be dismissed. It's a huge difference. So even if the level of Galus that Yidden experienced in Mitzrayim, that Yidden became Avadim in the true sense of the word, does not apply anymore, but Galus, as far as the condition that Yidden are surrounded by and are in, that level of Galus definitely still exists when Yidden went into Galus Baba. So here the Rebbe is just bringing this as a dugma for two different levels of Galus. A Galus where Yidden become truly enslaved, and a Galus which is just an external circumstance, but it's still a Galus nevertheless. Not only this, another point there is, in the very same Galus itself, there could be a difference between one individual and another. The difference of different levels that people are on, how they experience that very same Galus. Rabbeinu HaKadosh, so he lived not long after the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash. So he lived in Eretz Yisrael in the time when the Romans ruled over Eretz Yisrael. He was a very good friend of Antoninus, the Roman emperor. As the Gemara describes of the story how they used to learn together and so on. So much so that in the Pasuk, when Rivka is pregnant with Esav, with Yaakov and Esav, so the Pasuk there says, Shnei Goyim bevitnech, the two nations will come out from the children born from you. Who's the Shnei Goyim? So the Gemara says, and Rashi brings it, that it refers to Rebbe and Antoninus that learned Torah together and had a very, very close relationship. So was Rebbe in Galus? Yeah, on one level, Rebbe was in Galus. The Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, and the Romans were ruling in Eretz Yisrael. But at the same time, the hardship of the Galus for Rabbeinu HaKadosh was much less than anyone else. He had a very close relationship with the emperor. Obviously, all the different decrees that we read about in Gemara and Chazal, even in the times of the Tanoim, were not in the time of Rebbe. He didn't experience any of this. The story of Rabbi Akiva and all other stories about what the terrible, terrible decrees that the Romans made upon Klal Yisrael, Rebbe didn't experience any of that. On the other hand, another example of one of the greatest Tanoim that did experience a very harsh Galus. Rav Shimon ben Yochai lived before the times of Rabbeinu HaKadosh. He was forced to hide in a cave for 13 years because of the decrees of the Roman kingdom that forced him to hide. So he experienced Galus in a very, very harsh way. But the interesting thing is, and this actually says about Rav Shimon ben Yochai himself, so Masha'amar Abhil Miparich B'Shem Rabbeinu Azaken, Abhil Parcha, said in the name of the Alter Rebbe, when it comes to such great neshamas, the Churban Beis Hamikdash did not at all affect them. They had the revelation of godliness to the same extent, the same level, like when the Beis Hamikdash was standing. He didn't experience a galus at all. Which basically means that on one hand, Rav Shimon ben Yochai, as far as the physical condition is concerned, he experienced a very harsh galus. He had to hide in a cave. But mitzad the level of Gilead Lakus that he experienced. But Rav Shimon ben Yochai, the Beis Hamikdash was not destroyed at all. Similar we find B'chaim Apratim the Kol Echad V'Echad in Israel. when it comes to the life of every individual Yid. Every individual Yid can make a choice how much he wants to live in Golus and how much he wants to live in Geula and redemption. Inyan Geula Nasa, how do you live with redemption? Nasa Yidei Limud Torah. When you learn Torah, you put your life into Torah, you take yourself out of the limitations of the Golus of Elam Haza. You're living in a different reality. You're living with the Eibishter. Who's a true free man? Someone that's sitting and learning Torah. You learn the Eibishter's Torah. Torah is higher than the limitations of the world. You get connected, the Yichud Nifla, with the Eibishter's Chochmah, so that you're not living in Golus. Similar thing is also if a person davens properly. So here the Rebbe quotes what it says in the Alter Rebbe in Tanya says as follows: the individual spark of the Shechina that's in the neshama of every single Yid, it leaves the exile and captivity for that time. In this life of davening, which is considered to be chayisha at the time when the person is davening, so the davening elevates the person that at that time he's not in a galus. The Gemara says that learning is called chay olam, and davening is called chayisha for that time. So similar to Torah, if a Yid davens properly, you're not in galus at that time. But even though this is some form of a redemption, but yet at the same time, birchas hagomel alin yishal geula, to actually make a bracha of a gomel b'shem or b'malchus to thank the Eibusher for redeeming a person from exile or from galus, he b'chava shiyatzim bebeis asurim dafka. That applies to a person that was imprisoned in prison and he got freed from prison. So there you have a chiyuv to make a bracha birchas hagomel. If a person davens or if a person learns Torah and he's freed from galus through this, you don't make a birchas hagomel for that, because to some extent your guf hagashmi is still in a matzav of galus. You can't say that it's mamish complete gola. So again, you see different extents of to what degree the gola affects the person.
It's like our speed. He was in the Vaira.
Right.
He felt the heat of the cliffs.
Correct. Right.
That's what they said now.
Correct.
You know,
But nevertheless, the guf hagashmi is still in galus. Yeah. Similar to Rav Shemecha, exactly. We say move on. So what do we understand from this? Shegam biyachas legula asida. We say move on. Shegam biyachas legula asida. Yeshnem kama chilukim dargis. When it comes to the gula asida, there's different madregis in this gula. The hesen lematzav shenem tzom lefneze shemimenu negolim. It all depends on what kind of a galus you're in. It depends which galus you're being redeemed from. Golus Bavel, Golus Mitzrayim, Golus Yavon, Golus Edom. And it also depends who you are. How harsh of a Golus are you involved in? And that depends on the person's individual Aveda. A person could be in a level where the Golus is very, very minimal. He's living with the Eibishter, he's living in Geula, he's connected to Torah and mitzvahs, and the Golus is not Teifas Makom so much. And then there's another person that the Golus for him is very heavy Golus. And for him, the Geula has a different description. So Geula is on a spectrum. It means something else for every individual. So generally speaking, this is the basis of the machlokes regarding where do we need Eliyahu Hanavi for ushering in Geula. It depends how you define Geula. That's what you say. What Eliyahu Hanavi does is connected to Geula, or maybe not connected. So that explains. In bitla chamasim. If this that the Rambam says that Eliyahu Hanavi comes to be mevatel chamasim, comes to be mevatel the vandalism or the violence in the world, uchelek v'shlav binyan gula, is that a part and a step to gula? Or maybe that's someone else. So it depends for who. For some people, mevatel chamasim, that has nothing to do with gula. He's way beyond Hamas. He has nothing to do with any vandalism, violence. He's on a much higher level. The fact that there could be some violence in the world, okay, that's a problem in the world that Eliyahu Hanavi will take care of, but it has nothing to do with Geula. For another individual, that's very integral to Geula. That's where his Golus is at. He's suffering. That's his suffering of Golus, and for him, this is a big part of redemption. As the Rebbe mentioned before, regarding every person, in different details in a person's life, the things that he's experiencing. Or there's even more general things in a person's life, and any individual Yid. Or it also depends on what's going on in the world at large. how you define Golus. Avaloi chelik ma'gula the Klal Yisrael. So it could be that these things Eliyahu Navi does is a separate thing, and it's not necessarily part of the Geula. This is all biyachas lematzavam chulu shabali aplukta. So if you look into the people, the Tanoim, that argued about this, and you'll see how they experienced Golos and what Geula meant for them, you'll understand why they had different opinions, how you define Geula. The Rebbe doesn't get into the details to explain this. Right? What did we have before over here? There's Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon. There were various opinions before.
Where is it continuing?
Yeah. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon. There's different opinions about it. The Rebbe doesn't explain it. It's right there. Okay, so that's the conclusion of this Inyan, B'negeya to Eliyahu Hanavi. Huh? Okay, there's a Hemshech up here in Sif Test. Should we begin the Hemshech now, or should we continue next week?
I personally don't. We could go another 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, so we'll start in for another few minutes, and we'll continue next week. Okay?
Starting at
Sif Test. Sif Test 308, yeah. Hine Hemshech la'amalel al dvar hashlila deplukta b'mitzias. So in connection to what we just explained regarding Eliyahu Hanavi, that everything that Rambam says about Eliyahu, they're not arguing about a fact. It's just an argument of how you define Golos, and that is the basis of the argument, how you define Gola. So Yeshlo Yosef, Shekenu b'negei ma shekosav Rambam b'tchilas haperek. The same is also true regarding another famous argument that the Rambam brings in the beginning of the Perek regarding what happens in Yemosh HaMashiach. So here the Rambam says as follows: Al Yala Halev, it should not enter your heart to say, should be Yemosh HaMashiach, he bottled Davam Minhag Shalaylam. The Mashiach will come, anything of the regular, customary things in the world and nature in the world will change. Or there'll be something new, something unusual in creation. Everything in the world in Teva will continue as was. And this is the opinion that's brought in the Gemara. Shmuel in the Gemara says, "Ein ben olam hazel imayis haMashiach ela shibud malchus bavad." Only difference is that the kingdom, the governments that we live under, will not be our king anymore. Melech HaMashiach will be our king. The Eibusher will be our king. That's the only difference. But as far as Teva, the nature in the world, that will not change. The fact that it says the Nevuah in Yeshaya for Garzev and Keves, that the wolf lies with the lamb, the Nomerim Gidi Yirbots, the leopard lies with the goat, or they'll be together. How could this be? So this is a miracle. Mashal v'chida. It's all just a mashal for something else. It doesn't really mean physically, literally. Inyan Adavar, and the idea is what's the mashal? What is it a mashal for? Sheyu Yisrael Yeshvin Levetach Emrishe Goyim HaMeshulim Kizev Kanama. That the Yidden, which are compared to a lamb or to a goat, will live in peace with the Goyim that are compared to a wolf or a leopard. And v'yachzeru kulam l'das emes v'cholo. And everybody will return and come around to see the truth of the religion of Yidden. Messiah, then the Rambam concludes, v'chein kol kayetze be'elo advarim b'inyan HaMashiach. Anything similar you find in Psukim about Mashiach, hey Mishalim. Anytime it speaks about miracles that will happen, it's just all Mishalim. Will be Maisa Mashiach, Yedeya Lakoil Le'ezadov Haya Mashal. When Mashiach comes, we'll know how to interpret all these Mishalim. V'kame inyan ramzabehem, or ma inyan ramzabehem, that is, and what exactly is hinted with all these Mishalim. That's what the Rambam says. So the Ravid asked, it says in the Torah in Parshas B'chukaisai, Vishbati Chaya Ra Min Haaretz. I will remove all the wild beasts from the world. So it says a clear pasuk that it's going to be a miracle, that there will be no more wild animals, no more wild beasts. Hainu Shledas Ravid Hapirish. The Ravid holds no, when it says in the Torah, when it says in Yeshaya, the Garzev and Keves, it says before that in the Torah, Vishbati Chayira, it all means literally, Koloima Shinoi Minhage Shalaylam. The nature of the world is going to change when Mashiach arrives. So V'gam Kan Shelas Hashayla Amura, here we can ask the question we discussed before, Keitza Titochin Plukte B'Metzias. How could it be that the Rambam and Ravid are arguing about a fact, whether the nature of the world will change or whether the nature of the world will not change? That's the Shayla here. Okay, so the Rebbe over here gives two answers to this. Now, this is actually a subject that's discussed in another Sikha Barichas as well. But here the Rebbe will explain again that there's no machlokes b'metzias. It just depends on the time period. It depends on different things. But there's no machlokes b'metzias about this, as we'll see in Mitzvah Shem next week. Okay, gute Nacht.